Hello again, Nebraska All-State Cellists. My name is Gregory Clinton, and I'm here today to help you prepare your 2022 All-State audition. I'm a member of the artist faculty at the University of Nebraska-Omaha. I also serve as the Associate Principal Cellist of the Omaha Symphony, and I'm a member of the Grand Teton Music Festival Orchestra in the summer. We'll start with the scales, but as you all can tell by looking at the audition materials, you've got a multifaceted audition here, and it's designed to give your listener a good idea of both your technical command of the instrument and your musicality. So when we first start out with the scales, of course, you're basically trying to go for good intonation, steady rhythm, consistent tone, the kinds of things that your listener will be able to use to assess your basic command of the instrument, your technical command of the instrument. Major scales on the cello that have few accidentals, no accidentals like C major to few accidentals, something like G major with one sharp or F major with one flat, are not too difficult to negotiate fingering wise if you employ the idea that you'll stay in first position most of the time and utilize open strings. For this audition, playing 80 to the quarter note where you're playing eighth notes, it might be a good idea to use that kind of fingering so that you're not really getting hung up with trying to figure out fancy fingerings. If you were to play this slower, you might employ a fingering that avoids open strings. So let me give you an example. I've actually put two different kinds of fingerings in the on this sheet of scales, which will be embedded in this video. And you can take a look at them and see if which one is preferable to you. But if we take, just for example, the C major scale, which you all know has no sharps or flats in it, you are able to utilize the C, G, D, and A strings, open strings of the cello to play this scale. So in this case, you would just start in first position and hang out there until you're required to go up the A string. So it would sound like this. Once you get to the end of that second octave in any of these scales, I would advocate playing a pattern of two notes, and three notes. And I think that most of you who have studied with private teacher will probably be familiar with this fingering. So once you get to the end of this second octave, which I just did, you would do two notes, and then three at the end. So it would be stay in first position, two notes, three notes. It'd be the same fingering coming down. Now, like I said, if you wanted to add just a little bit of a vibrato on each one of these notes in your presentation of the scale, and you wanted to avoid open strings so that you're able to vibrate on every single note and not have some notes vibrated, some notes not, like the open strings, for example, then you could employ a fingering where you do patterns of three in each position, like this. 3 notes, then 3 notes, 3 more, 3 more, 3 more, 3, last note from the B leading tone to the C, you could just stick your third finger out, get that, and then come back. So the nice thing about that fingering is that it will work for every single scale. In fact, when you get to a scale like E major, for example, and that is one of the required scales this year, that is actually the best fingering because you can't really employ the use of the open C, the open G, or the open D string in an E major scale. All those notes are sharp. You've got C sharps, G sharps, and D sharps in the key of E major. So you have to avoid those open strings as it is. So for an E major scale, you'll notice that I have that fingering here as well. You start on the E and then you do patterns of 3. Now you can, that last octave, you can do 2 notes, 3 notes, or you can do this other fingering where I still do patterns of 3 with the 3-3 at the end. So your choice, because fingerings, there aren't necessarily right fingerings or wrong fingerings. There are fingerings that are maybe used to try to avoid string crossings or try to avoid clumsy shifts, but whatever works for you is the right fingering. If you can play, something better in tune using one fingering, by all means use it. I mean, in the end, you could do a scale playing all ones, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. I probably wouldn't suggest doing that, but sometimes we actually practice that just for a shift thing. For example, like let's say we were just doing that E major scale with all ones. And if we hooked it, exercise. But of course we don't use a fingering all ones. That's a little ridiculous. But if that would be the best fingering for you, then you use that fingering. So anyway, I've got several different fingerings here for you to use on the major scales, and just make sure that again that you're playing consistent tempo and consistent tone, whether you use vibrato or not. If you're going to use vibrato, use the fingering that you can vibrate on every note. If you're not going to use vibrato, then you can use one of the easier fingerings. But don't vibrate some notes and not other notes. Either use vibrato all the time or don't use any vibrato at all. At 80 to the quarter note with these 8th notes, you probably can get away with not using any vibrato if you're playing with a good tone. And of paramount importance is playing in tune, because we want to be able to know that you know where all of the half steps, whole steps are, and what the relationships are between these notes, and that you can play really, really well in tune. Okay, well let's now go to the minor scales. The minor scale, let me see if I can pull it up on my iPad here. The minor scales, I do believe that this pattern of 3 notes in each position with that pattern of 2 notes, and 3 notes in the last octave, the 3rd octave, is probably your best bet, because it works for all of these scales, and it also helps you negotiate the melodic minor, what happens in a melodic minor. First of all, you know that a minor scale is relative to the major scale in a certain way. If we look at C major, it has no sharps or flats. If we go to the A in C major and play from an A to an A, but use all the C major notes, you will get what's called an A natural minor scale. That's why it's related to C major. It's actually a modal scale related to C major. The half steps and the whole steps, of course, then end up being in different places. But that's where the scale comes from. It's a scale derived from a major scale. Now the thing that makes the melodic different than the natural minor is that you have to raise the 6th and 7th scale degree going up, and then you have to lower it back down into its natural state when you're coming down, when you're descending. So again, if we take the, I don't think you have A minor to play in this one, so let's take something different. For example, we've got F major, which has 1 flat, right? So if we play F major, it sounds like this. Okay, that has 1 flat. Now, if we go to the 6th note of F major, we get to a D. D is the relative minor to F major. Because if we go from a D to a D, playing just the F major notes, which means you're going to play all, everything, just white keys like on the piano, except for that B flat, you're going to get the natural D natural minor scale. So this is what it would sound like in its natural state again. Okay. But melodic minor has a wrinkle. It raises the 6th and 7th, the 6th and 7th scale degree going up, and then going back to the natural minor on the way down. So in the key of D minor, melodic minor, you have to raise both the B flat to a B and the C natural to a C sharp. So it now sounds like this. That's what you would get in the melodic minor, raising the 6th and 7th on the way up, lowering them on the way down. Now, the best fingering, like I said, I think, is to use patterns of 3 in each position, going both up and down, because it is a consistent fingering that will work for all of these scales. So instead of trying to memorize a different fingering for all of these scales, it's better if you can come up with one that will work for all. So in this case, we'll go slowly. I'll show you, and you can look at this like again, like I said, in the embedded scale sheet in the video, and you'll see what I'm talking about. So if I play 3 notes in first position. Of 2. Okay, now I can use the same fingering pattern coming down, but once I hit that D up here, I have to pull back the 2 and 1 so that I can go from a C, a D, back to a C natural and a B flat. And patterns of 2. Starting this, I'm at the top of the 2nd octave, so now I can go those patterns of 3. As you know, most of our patterns on cello are one of 3 things. We either play a whole step and a half step, like this, 1, 3, 4, or if we're up here, we can play 1, 2, 3, because the distances are smaller. Or a half step, whole step, 1, 2, 4, or again, up here you can do 1, 2, 3, like that. Or an extended position, where you do 1, 2, 4, and you have a whole step in between 1 and 2, and a whole step between 2 and 4. Up here you can get away, again, with playing 1, 2, and 3, and still get whole steps in there distances are smaller as you go up. So in this minor scale, collection of minor scales, you're basically using one of those three patterns all the time. In the D minor, here's a whole half, here's a whole whole, here's a half whole, here's a whole whole, here's a whole half. Then pattern of two. Now there's whole half. When I pull back, I've got whole whole, right? Here are the two patterns of two. Now I'm going to come down. Whole whole, whole whole, whole whole, whole half, whole half. So I'm really just doing a collection of three notes that are pulling from those three options: whole half, half whole, or whole whole. So if you can get this all straight in your head, you'll have a much better success conveying to your listener that you've got command of your instrument and you understand how these scales are put together. Again, try to play them consistent in tempo. Try to play them consistent in tone. Just a nice, beautiful sound. It doesn't have to be overly loud or soft. You don't want to play anemically like you sound like you're scared. And above all, play in tune with a good sound consistently through. And then I think you'll get a pleasing result from the scales.